So they were trying to talk me into going. So anyhow, I guess I weakened a bit. So they said he'd call me sometime and we'd go. So Thursday, he called. You know, well, what the heck, you know, nobody else I know of will ever go, so, you know, I may as well, if I'm ever going to try it, you know, that'd be the time. And I'd gone out and looked before, and an undershirt, and a turtleneck long sleeve sweater, and then that quilted insulated coat that I have. It reminds me, I ought to wash that thing. I've really worn that thing, and whether I can put it out of service long enough to wash it or not. Getting awful dirty. Anyhow, so, you know, it was pretty good, even though it was rather cold. I don't know if it was 15 or maybe 20, somewhere along in there. But, of course, I see now you work enough that you generate a bit of heat while you're out there. Especially the less you know about it, the harder you work at it, it seems. So I had to rent equipment, and that was a little bit of a hassle. You know, they ask you, well, what kind of skis do you want, and, you know, this kind of stuff, and I don't have foggiest idea. So you rent your boots and your skis and your poles, and they gave me poles that were too short. They're supposed to be able to figure that out. You put your height and your weight and, you know, this kind of stuff on the card. They're supposed to, and whether you're a beginner or intermediate or expert, they're supposed to know what you ought to have from that kind of information. But anyhow, so I got the stuff. And of course, it's a major hassle just to get it all put together and put on. You have to, of course, change your shoes. And these boots are real stiff, heavy things. And what they do, they're like a cast. They lock your ankle up, so you can't bend your ankle at all. In other words, your bottom of your leg and your skis are all one piece. Of course, there's safety catches on there. If you strain things too hard, the boot will come unattached from the ski there. So you have to get your boots on, and then you can't hardly walk because you can't bend your ankle. So you're kind of clomping along like Frankenstein or something in these boots, you know, to get outside then. And then those snap onto your skis. And then there's straps that you also have to rig up around your pants legs. So that's if your skis come unhooked from your boots, they won't go shooting on down the hill. These are, you know, just little strings to catch them. And trying to bend over and get all this done, of course, then you're standing on the skis, and if you aren't on absolute level, your skis want to take off. And you can't bend at your ankle, so you got to do all your bending at the waist and knees, and, you know, your legs get tired pretty quick trying to do that. But anyhow, finally, of course, I didn't know how to work any of the buckles. Every brand of boot and everything else is different the way they're made. But finally got, you know, it wasn't even like his stuff. Finally got everything snapped and buckled and popped and clicked. So then the first hassle is, of course, that's fairly level. And the only way you move there is to, you know, push with these poles on the level, and you don't go very far. You know, the skis, they're slippery, of course, but, you know, they don't coast very far. So you're just constantly pushing with these poles. And so we worked our way around to what they call the bunny hill, which is for beginners. It's supposed to be very gentle. But somehow when you look at it from the top, and even though it's not very long either, it doesn't look very gentle, of course, at first. And so this guy, John is his name, was telling me, you know, a few of the fundamentals, how to stop. You know, supposedly you spread your heels apart into a snowplow position, and that's supposed to make you stop. And it does if you're on almost no slope. If you're on the level, that works quite well. You know, that makes you stop. So I went over to the far side of the bunny hill where it was just as shallow as possible, and tried to slide down there, but you talk about slippery, it's worse than ice skates. I thought there would be more, you know, like with roller skates or ice skates, you can push sideways. You know, they only roll forward and back, so you kind of push sideways at a slight angle, and that's the way you can move around. Well, skis don't have hardly any side thrust to them either. They're just as apt to slide sideways as they are front to back, or there's just an ever so slight difference there. And I guess that's the whole technique in skiing, is learning to use that ever so slight differential there to control yourself. And so I just went down the hill, I of course didn't know how to steer, and the stopping thing didn't work. When you get on the hill, it'll slow you down a little, but you sure can't stop. But anyhow, I managed to slide down the hill, some forward, sideways, and everything else, but got down the hill. Of course, the main advantage you have with skis, you can't fall over forward or backward, because your legs are locked to the skis that way. You fall sideways is the way you fall if you're gonna fall. Or you can sit down, bending at the knees, you can sit yourself clear down. So I managed to make it across that, and so then they have a rope tow. It's just a moving rope, kind of a nylon type rope, big around. And you gotta kind of you get all lined up, and then you take a hold of the rope, and at first you kind of let it slip through your gloves, and the harder you squeeze, then you begin to move. And that's a little tricky, especially at first, because it kind of gets you going too fast, and it seems like they ran the rope awful fast. I don't know why it's got to go that fast, for beginners. But anyhow, it takes you up the hill. Unless you slip all the time, you can go slow by just, letting your hands slip all the time. But I managed to get back up the hill. But they've got the rope tow over on the steep side of the hill. Well, I didn't want to practice on the steep side. That meant, like, once I got up the hill, then I had to use the poles in my arms to push myself across the top of the hill over to the far side, which is 20 feet or something like. Not very far, but it still takes a lot of strokes, Then try to slide down that hill again, trying to do things different to see what does what. Of course, then I wind up at the bottom of the hill. Now I got to go across the bottom, with the poles, pushing myself over to the rope to get over. Because there is no way to go uphill with skis. It's just impossible to push yourself with the poles up even the slightest of grade. Even an inch to 10-mile rise is just nearly impossible. You push forward 2 inches and slide back 1. You can walk sideways. That's the only other choice, which doesn't work too bad, but that's kind of slow. So anyhow, in my trying to practice on the bunny hill, all this work with my arms is where I really began to get tired in the arms. And he tried to point out, shift your weight this way and that, and I don't know that he knew quite what he's talking about, and not very descriptive in the lesson. But there were classes of people out there getting lessons from the ski instructors, so I just managed to kind of overhear what they were saying and also watch them do what he was trying to tell them to do. And I think I picked up more information from that. About the second time down the bunny hill, and I fell over. You get the skis kind of go sideways on you and you fall over. Well, trying to get up, nobody tells you about that. That ought to be the first lesson. They ought to have everybody go sit down and then figure out how to stand up or get back up on the skis again. That is one major hassle, because you can't get your knees under you. See, here you are, you got your skis on the ground. Your knees are right straight up from there because you can't bend your ankles. And trying to get your weight, back up over the skis, unless you got muscles. I know some of the instructors are showing people how to get up, but they're so strong in the legs, they can just, from a sitting squat position, they can just stand up. Well, the people they were trying to tell to do that, they couldn't do it. I couldn't do it, So I have to try to use the pole, like set the pole beside me and climb with your arms, pull yourself up somewhat. But that's tricky. If you got the pole a little in front or a little behind you, as soon as you try to push on it, then your skis zoom forward or back. Trying to get balance before you can even stand up is an awful task. Actually, it's easier to get up if you're on a steep hill. Because then you put your skis downhill from you and just kind of rock yourself back up on them. But anyhow, getting up also takes a lot of arm power to do that, which I had a lot of experience with. So anyhow, I wasn't making much progress, and you know, they didn't work like I thought. They'd be more like skates, but they aren't. So that kind of blew my whole theory on how you work it. So I was, you know, floundering, trying to figure out how you'd ever control anything. So anyhow, I don't know whether he got tired of trying to teach me, or of course he couldn't ski because he goes and skis on the bigger hills. So he left and just let me, you know, I told him, just let me struggle. I just gotta, you know, fight it for a while and see what happens. Also, it was easier for me to, by myself, to overhear what the classes were saying. It's amazing, you know, the age range of people. There's one guy, he had to be in his 50s, I expect, who apparently had never skied before, because he was as bad as I was. And of course there were a lot of like high school kids. I think there were several busloads of high school kids came in, and a lot of them were taking lessons. And then there was one lady there who brought her little girl. I think it was a little girl, had such a big snowsuit on you couldn't hardly tell. That kid couldn't have been more than 2 at the most. Little miniature skis, and you know, of course, kids couldn't hardly fall down. Must have only been about 2 foot tall. But that kid managed to slide down the hill. It was halfway amazing. That, you know, no worse than the rest of us. Of course, then there were some other kids there, more in the 6, 7, 8, 9, along in that range, you know. And some of them were halfway decent skiers, but you know, they just didn't want to get up on the big hills. Or I think what they did, their parents probably only bought them. You can buy the pass only to use the rope tow, which is only $1. And of course, I bought the pass, you know, that lets you use any of the tows. They have the rope tow, and another called a Poma lift goes up one of the more intermediate hills, and then there's a chair lift goes clear up to the top of the main hill. But anyhow, I was doing so bad, I finally decided I'd wasted the money on the all-inclusive lift, because it didn't look like I was ever going to get off the bunny hill. So after an hour or so of me sliding and falling and just not making hardly any progress, I couldn't steer, I couldn't stop. You know, I tried to do what they supposed they were doing, but it didn't seem to work for me. And so I wasn't doing any good at all. Finally, John came back around to see how I was doing. And I was getting awful tired, too. So we quit for a while, went inside. And there's a cocktail lounge in the upper part of the chalet. So we went up there, sat for a few minutes. Of course, you don't want to waste time, so you're paying like, what was it, $4.50 for your ticket to use the lifts, and then like another $4 or $4.50 to rent the equipment. Of course, he's not renting equipment, but I was. You know, it costs like $9 or so for an evening. That's during the week. On weekends, it's about twice that expensive. So, of course, that's enough. We got there 6:30 or 7, and they close at 10, so that gives you, you know, enough hours, really. So anyhow, then I went back to the bunny hill, and he tried to give me some more pointers, which didn't soak in. So finally he left me again to flounder, and so then I did some more eavesdropping on some more classes that come out. And then I kind of began to catch on, you know, began to get the feel of what it was, and I got so I could steer somewhat. Part of the time I could steer. So that helped. I could wind up near the rope tow. You know, I could go down the hill, kind of cross the hill, and wind up near the rope tow, so I didn't have to push myself so far with the skis. And then as I began to be able to steer and shift the weight and all that, I began to get so I didn't fall down so much.
And then I keep going to the steeper and steeper parts of the bunny hill. So anyhow, finally got so that I could control it a little bit and gain confidence. And then also I could get in a lot more practice. I could get around quicker. And also, it was getting late or later, so that most of the little kids in the classes and the like, they had already moved on to the big hills, see, and left me there on the bunny hill by myself. But then I got a better chance to practice. I could just, as fast as I could go down the hill, I could get on a rope and come back up and then just go right back down again and just go around and round and round and, begin to get better at it. So it must have been 9 o'clock then, so John came back around, and he just thought I was doing fantastic, and I just had to go up the big lift, or the Poma lift, up on the intermediate hill. Well, I wasn't about ready to do that. That's tricky. I can stand at the bottom and watch to see how you get on it, because it's a little trickier to get on. It's an overhead cable, and then it's got like elastic ropes that hang down, and on the end of that rope is a plastic disc, about like a frisbee, about like a small dinner plate. And they aren't exactly rope. Well, the bottom of it's stiff. It's a pipe, and then the elastic's inside the pipe. So what you do at the bottom, as this goes by, you grab that and you stick that in between your legs, so that dish is behind you. You kind of sit back on it. And then the cable moves all the time overhead, and as it moves out, it begins to pull on this elastic, this real rubbery rope, and finally, it gets so it's pulling hard enough, it makes you begin to move. It stretches the rope that hangs down to this little dish, and so then you take off. And I could watch people and how they got on it, but I didn't know how you get off on the other end. I decided I wanted to see that before I ventured up there. So I just took my skis off and walked up the hill. And so I could watch to see what happened at the top. And I'm glad I did, because that's a little tricky up there. They take you up and all of a sudden the ground just drops away real steep, and you're supposed to, get that thing out and then ski down this quick, steep little hill. Because they're trying to drop you down like, at least 6 feet or so you don't get hit in the head with these things. They just go right on above you. Well, that's a pretty steep hill for a beginner like me. But anyhow, so I finally, at least I'd seen it, so I thought, well, I'll try it. So I waited until there wasn't anybody around at the bottom of it. So I skied back down the hill. Actually, it's even more gentle than the bunny hill. It's just a lot longer. So that was kind of nice. So that was a good hill, so I wanted to use that lift to get up it. So anyhow, I got on this thing, I got it between my legs all right. You have like 1 or 2 seconds to grab that thing and get it in there before it goes past it, which is enough time if you don't fumble. So, it stretches and stretches and stretches, and finally it stretches enough that it begins to make you move. Well, it works kind of like a slingshot. It's stretched itself out, and then when you begin to move. You really take off, which I expected it to do. But then you're going faster than the cable. It's catapulted you ahead. So then you almost stop. You put your coast to a stop while it catches up again. Well, I hadn't anticipated that this thing was going to overshoot and I was going to stop. And so here I am leaning back, expecting that thing to pull on me, and it doesn't, because the cable hadn't caught up with it. And so the first time I just sat down, I was leaning over backwards, and I just fell over, or sat down backwards. But then I just had to fall to the side and try to quick get out of the way before whoever was coming behind me was going to run over me. Well, then I knew what to expect, so I got back and tried it again. I was all right at that time, because I didn't lean back so much. So once you get going then, get evened out, it's a nice, gentle, actually slower than the rope tow. It's kind of a nice lift. So it took me up, and I managed to get off all right. It dumped you off, and I went quick into the V formation to try to slowly slide down, and I got off of it all right. And skied back down that big long hill, so that's pretty nice. So I got right back on that again. And that hill wasn't very busy, it's too calm for everybody else. So it was nice to have pretty near the whole hill myself to practice. So then, second time I went up, here I am ready to be dumped off of this thing. Here's people standing around. There's signs that say, don't stand in the unloading area. Well, there's two people standing right at the bottom of the unloading area. And me, who can't hardly steer or stop, so I just had to fall over. Either I was going to run into them, or I had to, the only way I could for sure stop is to wipe out, fall over. So I did. My skis broke off and everything else. The boots came loose. Trying to get all that snapped and buckled back again. By that time, my legs were getting so tired. That after, from stooping down, trying to buckle and snap all these things, get them lined up so they snap right. I began to get cramps in my legs, trying to kneel like that. So I had an awful time getting buckled back up again. So anyhow, I was getting up towards 10 o'clock then. They finally announced, to start bringing the rental equipment back in. So I made one more lift and went up that hill once more. Well, I wanted to wind up back at the chalet to turn the equipment in. Normally I've been going up this hill and getting off to the right to go back down the gentle hill. Well, to get to the chalet, I'd have to get off and go down the hill to the left. And it didn't look too bad, so I got off and started down towards the left. And it's not bad until you get part way out there, and there's a real steep, it's short but very steep drop off. Well, I was in it, and there was just nothing I could do, so I just had to try to ride it out and slow myself down as much as possible, but I didn't make it. I fell then on that hill. But again, it was quitting time, so it was pretty near deserted. At least my skis didn't come off that time. So I managed to get back up, and then it was gentle from there on into the chalet, because I didn't want, my arms were so tired I couldn't, get back to the chalet by pushing on the poles anymore. So anyhow, pretty well thoroughly exhausted by that time. So 3 hours was on plenty. So anyhow, I finally gained a little bit of control in life. But oh, am I stiff today. I was surprised. I wasn't too bad Friday, but it's really starting to get me now today.
I don't understand why something doesn't come through on that. Now let's play it back.